I was the last to know that my wife Juliet was pregnant with her second child. My 2-year corporate assignment in South Africa had finally ended. When I walked through the front door, Juliet was already about to pop. I didn't scream. I didn't demand answers. I just looked at her calmly and said, "Now that I'm back, we can file for divorce." Juliet panicked. She grabbed my hand, her voice trembling with anxiety. "Alex, let me explain. You were gone for 2 years. Leo was the one who took care of everything around the house. I only had this baby to repay him. Don't overthink it." Our 6-year-old daughter, Kate, also spoke up to defend her mother. "You were gone for so long. If it wasn't for Leo, Mommy and I would have starved to death. What's wrong with Mommy having a baby for Leo? You're just making a big deal out of nothing." Looking at the mother and daughter tag-teaming me, I simply nodded. You have a point. I did feel a sense of guilt toward my wife and daughter. I hadn't been there for them over the last 2 years. But during my time abroad, I sent every single penny I earned back to Juliet. I made $120,000 a year, which was more than enough for them to live a luxurious life. I went to that harsh environment just to secure a better future for them. I never expected to be rewarded with this. Honestly, I had heard rumors while I was still abroad. A colleague back home had dropped a hint in an email. At the time, I refused to believe it. I chose to trust Juliet, convincing myself she was just gaining weight. I finished my project 2 weeks early and rushed home, eager to surprise her. It was only when I saw her giant belly with my own eyes that my heart completely died. At this moment there was no anger left in me, only endless disappointment. Knowing she was in the wrong, Juliet poured a glass of water and handed it to me nervously. "Alex, have some water first." I took the glass and said quietly, "You're heavily pregnant. Don't stand for too long. Sit down." Seeing how calm I was, the tension in her shoulders visibly relaxed. She awkwardly sat down next to me, supporting her heavy belly. I took a sip of water and continued, "Since you're pregnant, I won't stand in the way of you and Leo. He isn't married anyway. Once our divorce goes through, you can go live with him." Hearing this, Juliet's face instantly flushed with anger. "Alex, what is that supposed to mean?" She stared at me, her voice rising. "Are you abandoning me? I've been with you since I was 20. I stayed by your side when you had nothing. I've sacrificed so much for this family. How can you just bring up divorce so easily?" She was right. We had a history. But all those years of building a life together couldn't survive 2 years of loneliness. It was pathetic. I turned to Kate, who was watching TV nearby. "Kate, if Mommy and I get a divorce, who do you want to live with?" Without even looking at me, Kate answered instantly, "Mommy. If you and Mommy divorce, she can marry Leo. Then I can finally call Leo Daddy." I've wanted to call him that for a long time. It was exactly the answer I expected, yet it still stung a little. I nodded. "Okay. You'll get your wish." I stood up, ignored Juliet's attempts to grab me, dragged my suitcase and walked right out of the house. I went straight to a local bar and called up a few close friends I hadn't seen in 2 years. At the table, my friends teased me. "The first thing you do when you get back isn't hugging your wife but drinking with us? What's up with that?" I downed a shot of whiskey and said in a hoarse voice, "Juliet cheated on me." My friends froze, exchanging glances. One friend who had heard some rumors asked hesitantly, "I heard Juliet is pregnant. Is it true?" "Yeah. It's her childhood friend's baby." The entire table went dead silent. The atmosphere became heavy. I kept pouring drinks, desperately trying to numb my brain with alcohol. "Halfway through the night," Juliet called. I answered groggily. Her sharp, lecturing voice blasted through the speaker. "Alex, can you stop throwing a tantrum? We haven't seen each other in 2 years, and you walk in, give me attitude, and pull this running away from home stunt? Are you a child?" Kate's sweet voice came from beside her. "Mommy, stop calling Daddy. If he wants to leave, let him. We did perfectly fine without him for 2 years anyway." Without saying a word, I hung up. They were right. They did perfectly fine without me. My 2 years in South Africa were brutal. The working conditions were terrible, constant blackouts, water shortages, and I often had to work in 100-degree heat. But whenever I thought of the money I was making to give my family a better life, I pushed through. I never imagined that when I returned, my home would no longer be mine. After drinking with my friends, I sobered up slightly and went back to the house. I still had some personal belongings to pack. It was past 10 p.m. when I unlocked the door. Juliet was still awake. Seeing my drunk state, she pinched her nose in disgust and began lecturing me again. "Alex, do you have any idea how bad smoke and alcohol are for a pregnant woman? You come back reeking of booze, completely ignoring my health. I'm just here to pack my things. I'm leaving right after." "Leaving?" Juliet's voice went up an octave. "Where are you going now?" "The company dorms," I said flatly. Juliet exploded. She pointed a finger at my face. "Alex, how long are you going to keep acting like this? Can't you be a man and show some maturity? Do you have any idea how much Leo helped me while you were gone? When I had stomach flu, when my appendix flared up, when Kate had a high fever, Leo was the one who stayed up all night to take care of us. Even when my mom was hospitalized, Leo ran all the errands. I'm just carrying a baby for him to fulfill his dream of being a father. How can you be so incredibly selfish? Sure, I'm selfish. I let out a dry laugh. Have his baby. I'm not stopping you. I grabbed my bag and slammed the door behind me. Alex, you have zero class. You're not a real man. Juliet screamed from inside. I laughed. Maybe in her eyes only Leo was a real man. I had given everything to this family, but I could never warm her cold heart. The next morning, I submitted an application for an overseas transfer at my company. This time the destination was Europe. Before my South Africa project ended, my manager had already offered me the position of general manager for our European branch, which came with a massive pay raise. But I had turned it down because I wanted to come home to my wife and daughter. Now there was nothing left for me here. In the afternoon, I went back to the house with the divorce papers. Juliet and Kate weren't home. I called Juliet. Where are you? We need to sign the divorce papers. My words instantly triggered her. She snapped. I'm at the hospital for an ultrasound. I don't have time for this. Which hospital? I'll come to you. Alex, I'm about to give birth any day now. Do you have to stress me out like this? Even if you come, I'm not signing those papers. When I arrived at the hospital, I immediately ran into Juliet, who had just finished her checkup. Standing next to her besides Kate, was the baby's father Leo. Leo was carefully holding Juliet's arm, helping her sit down on a bench with absolute devotion, as if she were a piece of fragile glass. Kate was bouncing beside them. Leo, I hope mommy gives me a baby brother. When he grows up he can protect mommy and me with you. We'll be a happy family forever. Leo patted Kate's head with a doting smile. I asked the doctor, and it is indeed a baby boy. You're going to be a big sister soon, Kate. Yay. I thought my heart had turned to stone, but seeing this scene still sent a sharp pain through my chest. The wife and daughter I had loved and provided for were now someone else's family, and I was just an outsider. I gave everything only to end up with nothing. How pathetic. My sudden appearance shattered their cozy family picture. All three of them stopped smiling. I walked up to Juliet, holding up the divorce papers. I'm here to talk about the divorce. Juliet's face darkened instantly. Leo immediately stepped in front of her, shielding her behind him. He glared at me. Alex, Juliet is about to give birth. Please don't harass her right now. Stress is dangerous for a pregnant woman. Step aside, I said coldly, trying my best to suppress my anger. Leo spoke with a self-righteous tone. Alex, I have no intention of breaking up your marriage. Once the baby is born I will take him away. It won't affect your marriage at all. There is no need to take your anger out on Juliet. I'm over 30 with no wife and no kids. Juliet only agreed to have this baby because she felt sorry for my loneliness. As a man, you should show some generosity. I laughed out loud at his sheer audacity. You're absolutely right, I sneered. A man should be generous. How about this? I'll give you Juliet and Kate too. Is that generous enough for you? Leo stared at me bewildered. Enough, Juliet yelled. Her face was incredibly pale as she turned to Leo. Leo, take Kate and grab some snacks outside. I need to talk to Alex alone. Once Leo and Kate walked away, Juliet stood up holding her back. She snatched the divorce papers from my hand and without even looking at them, ripped them into shreds. Alex, I told you I'm not divorcing you. Get that through your head. I'm giving birth in 2 weeks. Don't you dare cause complications with my pregnancy. I knelt down, picked up the torn pieces of paper and said quietly, if you won't sign, I'll file a lawsuit. Juliet became hysterical. I'm pregnant. The court won't grant a divorce while I'm pregnant. The baby isn't mine. So what? You don't have a DNA test yet. The judge won't rule in your favor without proof. I let out a tired sigh. Juliet, since you and Leo love each other so much, and you're carrying his child, why are you holding on to me? Juliet went quiet for a few seconds. Her hostile expression softened, and she lowered her voice. Alex, Leo and I grew up together. He has loved me for over 10 years and he stayed single just for me. I couldn't bear to watch him suffer. I only wanted to give him a baby so he wouldn't be alone. It was just to fulfill his wish. But Alex, the only man I truly love is you. Her words didn't move me. They only made me want to throw up. She loved me so she slept with another man? How could she say something so shameless with such a straight face? I looked at the woman standing before me in the sterile hospital corridor. Her hand was still resting on her heavily swollen belly, her face a mixture of indignation and a strange, desperate entitlement. For 2 years I had survived. On 5 hours of sleep a night in a sweltering container office in South Africa, drinking bottled water and ignoring the constant ache in my joints. Also she could wear designer maternity clothes and live in a prime suburban home. And she stood there, telling me she had slept with another man out of pity. I'm leaving, Juliet, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to make a scene in public, not because I wanted to protect her dignity but because I had none left to lose myself. Alex, Don't you walk away from me, she hissed, trying to grab my arm. I stepped back, out of her reach, turned around and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Kate's voice, shrill and accusing. Mommy, don't cry. Let him go. We have Uncle Leo. I walked out into the cool, damp autumn air, took a deep breath and felt a strange, icy clarity settle over my chest. The grief was still there, a heavy, suffocating weight, but the confusion was gone. I knew exactly what I had to do. My first stop was not the company dorms but the bank. I sat in the private office of a personal banking manager, a quiet woman named Sarah, who looked at my corporate ID and my South African pay stubs with immediate professional respect. I want to freeze the joint checking and savings accounts, I said, sliding my ID across the desk. And I want to cancel all secondary credit cards issued under my name. Sarah looked at the screen, her eyes widening slightly as she saw the balances. Mr. Vance, your wife is listed as the primary co-owner on the joint savings. To completely close it, we need both signatures. However, as the primary earner and the person who established the account, you have the legal right to withdraw your portion of the funds or freeze the account in the event of a pending marital dissolution. Do it, I said. Freeze it. And the credit cards. They will be deactivated immediately, she said, her fingers clicking rapidly. Cross the keyboard. Any transactions attempted from this moment on will be declined. Thank you. My second stop was the law offices of Marcus Vance, no relation, a legendary divorce attorney recommended by my company's legal counsel. Marcus was a sharp, silver-haired man in his 50s who listened to my story without a single flicker of surprise. He had seen every variation of human betrayal, and my story was to him just another Tuesday. She's right about one thing, Alex, Marcus said, leaning back in his leather chair and tapping his pen on his desk. In this jurisdiction, the courts generally do not finalize a divorce while the wife is pregnant. It's a policy designed to protect the unborn child's legal status. However, that does not mean we cannot file. We can file the petition immediately on the grounds of adultery. He pulled a document from a folder. We will request a court-ordered prenatal paternity test. If she refuses, we wait until the birth. The moment that child is born, the hospital will require a birth certificate. If you do not sign it, and we demand a DNA test, the legal presumption of paternity is shattered. Once the DNA test proves the child is not yours, she has zero leverage. And my daughter? I asked, my throat tightening. Kate. Marcus looked at me, his eyes softening slightly with a rare touch of genuine empathy. She's 6 years old, Alex. She's been living with her mother and Leo for 2 years. From what you've told me, she has been heavily conditioned to accept him as a father figure. If we fight for full custody, it will be a long, dirty, and incredibly expensive battle that will traumatize the child. Is that what you want? I closed my eyes. I remembered Kate's face at the hospital, the way she had jumped up and down, cheering for Leo to be her real daddy. I remembered the absolute lack of warmth in her eyes when she looked at me, the father who had sent her postcards from Cape Town every week, postcards she had probably thrown into the trash without opening. No, I said, my voice cracking. If she wants him, let him have her. Very well, Marcus said, his pen resuming its steady, clinical clicking. We will push for a clean break. We will show the court that Juliet used your South African earnings, specifically the $120,000 a year you sent home, to support her lover and his child. We will demand that the marital home be sold, the assets divided, and that you be released from any future alimony obligations due to her egregious misconduct. He looked up, his eyes sharp. But for now, Alex, you need to go to Europe. Take the general manager position. Let the distance work in your favor. I nodded. I'll sign the transfer papers tomorrow. 2 days later, the storm hit the suburb of Willow Creek. It wasn't a storm of wind and rain, but a quiet, devastating collapse of a lifestyle built on a foundation of stolen money. I was sitting in my temporary apartment near the office, reviewing the shipping logistics for the European branch, when my phone began to ring. It was Juliet. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, she called again. Then a third time. Finally, a text message popped up on my screen. Alex, what did you do to the cards? I'm at the baby boutique with Kate and Leo, and the card was declined. I have $3,000 worth of nursery furniture at the counter. The cashier is looking at me like I'm a thief. Answer your damn phone. I didn't reply. I simply took a screenshot of the text and forwarded it to Marcus. An hour later, the call stopped, replaced by a call from an unknown number. Answered it, knowing it was likely Leo or her mother. Alex. Juliet's voice came through, high-pitched and hysterical. Are you insane? How could you freeze the accounts? I'm pregnant. I need to buy groceries. I have doctor's appointments. Do you want to starve your own daughter? Kate won't starve, Juliet. I said, my voice entirely flat. There is still $3,000 in the local checking account. That's your portion of the standard living allowance for this month. As for the credit cards, they are canceled. If you want to buy nursery furniture for Leo's baby, use Leo's credit card. Alex, Leo doesn't have that kind of money. Juliet screamed, her voice cracking with a sudden ugly panic. He's a freelance graphic designer. He's been working part-time so he could take care of us. How can you be so incredibly petty? If he doesn't have the money to buy a nursery, he shouldn't have had a baby, I said. And if he has enough time to play husband in my house, he has enough time to get a full-time job. You're a monster, she sobbed. I gave you my youth. I stayed with you when you were just a junior engineer making $30,000 a year. How can you do this to me? You stayed with me when I had nothing, Juliet. I agreed softly. But you left me when I gave you everything. Goodbye. I hung up and blocked the number. Over the next week, the reality of their cozy family began to crack under the cold pressure of unpaid bills. Without my secondary credit cards, Juliet could no longer afford the weekly organic meal delivery service she had subscribed to. She could no longer afford the premium preschool tuition for Kate, or the daily trips to the luxury mall. Leo, the devoted childhood friend who had sacrificed his single life for her, was suddenly faced with the reality of supporting a pregnant woman, 6-year-old child, and his own lifestyle on a freelance income of less than $20,000 a year. A colleague from my old department, a guy named Dave who lived 3 houses down from my marital home, called me on Friday night. Alex, Dave said, his voice hesitant. I don't want to get into your business, but there's been some shouting at your house. Yesterday I saw Leo loading his old Honda with several boxes of his things. It looked like he was moving back to his apartment, but Juliet was on the porch crying and holding his arm. Kate was screaming. Let them scream, Dave, I said, staring out of the window at the gray city skyline. It's their family now. 10 days later, I received a notification from my company's HR department. My visa for the European branch had been approved, and my flight to Frankfurt was scheduled for the following Wednesday. The same afternoon my phone rang. It was an automated notification from the Willow Creek Memorial Hospital. Patient Juliet Vance has been admitted to the labor and delivery ward. My hand shook slightly as I held the phone. Even after everything, after the betrayal, the lies, the financial lockdown, the biological instinct of 6 years of marriage still flared in my chest. For a split second I wanted to grab my keys and run to the hospital, to be the protective husband I had always been. But then, the image of Kate and Leo bouncing beside her at the clinic flashed in my mind. When he grows up, he can protect mommy and me with you. We'll be a happy family. Forever. I sat back down at my desk, took a deep breath, and called Marcus. She's in labor, I said. Good, Marcus replied, his voice clinical and cold. I've already contacted the hospital's legal department and filed the formal notice of non-paternity. Court-appointed representative will be at the hospital tomorrow morning with a non-invasive DNA cheek swab kit. Since she is married to you, the hospital's default protocol is to put your name on the birth certificate. Our notice stops that. She cannot put your name down without your signature, and she cannot get your signature without a verified DNA test. And Leo? I asked. Will he be there? Of course he will, Marcus said. But let's see if he's still smiling when he realizes he has to sign that birth certificate himself, which legally binds him to 18 years of child support on a graphic designer's salary. I didn't go to the hospital that night. Instead, I spent the evening packing my 2 suitcases. Packed my clothes, my passport, my corporate laptops, and a single small photo album. The album contained only photos of Kate when she was a baby, before the corporate assignments, before South Africa, before the child I loved had turned into a stranger who wished I would disappear. The next morning I drove to the hospital. I didn't go to the delivery room. I went to the administrative office on the first floor, where Marcus was already waiting for me with a notary public and a representative from the DNA laboratory. Within 30 minutes the paperwork was processed. The laboratory representative carried a small, sealed cooler up the elevator to the postpartum ward. Do you want to go up, Alex? Marcus asked, adjusted his briefcase. You have the legal right to see your daughter before you leave the country. I looked toward the elevators. I knew that on the 4th floor, in room 412, Juliet was lying in a hospital bed, holding her new baby boy. Leo was probably sitting beside her, his face full of doting pride, while Kate colored in a coloring book in the corner. If I walked into that room, what would I say? Would I scream? Would I beg? Would I try to force a child who hated me to love me? No, I said, turning my back on the elevators. There's nothing for me up there. As we walked toward the exit, a voice called out my name from behind. Alex. I stopped. It was Juliet's mother, Eleanor. She was a thin, elegant woman who had always looked down on my middle-class background even when I was earning six figures to support her daughter's lifestyle. Alex, how can you be so cold? Eleanor gasped, her face flushed with anger as she caught up to us. Your wife just went through 12 hours of labor. She almost had to have a C-section, and you're down here with lawyers playing financial games. She's not my wife, Eleanor, I said, my voice dead and quiet. She's Leo's wife. Now, if she had a hard labor, tell Leo to comfort her. Leo doesn't have the money for the private room. Eleanor snapped, her elegant mask slipping to reveal a sharp, desperate panic. The hospital is saying we have to move her to a shared ward because the primary insurance card was declined. Kate is crying because she has to sit in the public waiting room. You have to reactivate the card, Alex. Just for the hospital stay. We'll talk about the rest later. I looked at her. I saw the expensive silk scarf around her neck, the designer handbag on her arm, all paid for with the money I had earned in the 100-degree heat of South Africa. No, I said. Move her to the shared ward. Or pay for the private room. Yourself, Eleanor. After all, you've always told me that a real man provides for his family. Let's see if your new son-in-law is a real man. I turned and walked out of the hospital doors, the cool autumn wind blowing past my face as I stepped into my car. The international terminal at the airport was bustling with travelers. I sat in the executive lounge, a cup of black coffee in my hand, my laptop open on the table. The transfer to the Frankfurt office was complete, my apartment in Germany had been secured, and my new team was already waiting for my arrival. My phone buzzed on the table. It was an email from Marcus. The DNA results had been rushed through the laboratory's premium service paid for by my company's legal defense fund. Paternity test results, child male born to Juliet Vance. Alleged father Alex Vance. Probability of paternity, 0%. Attached to the email was a copy of the formal court petition, signed by the judge, officially dissolving the marital presumption of paternity. The hospital had been ordered to issue the birth certificate with the father's name left blank or with Leo's name should he choose to sign it. I closed the laptop, took a slow sip of my coffee and looked out of the large glass window at the airplanes taxiing on the runway. I felt a sudden profound sense of lightness. The anger that had consumed me for the last 3 weeks, the humiliation of being replaced in my own home, the physical ache of 2 years of brutal labor, they all evaporated into the clean, sterile air of the lounge. They were no longer my problem. The childhood friend who had loved her for 10 years was now legally bound to a woman with no assets, a 6-year-old child who was used to a luxury lifestyle, and a newborn baby with zero financial support from me. Juliet, who had sacrificed her youth for me, was now facing a public divorce, the loss of her marital home, and a massive drop in her standard of living. They had got exactly what they wanted. They had got their happy family. And I had got my freedom. Flight 114 to Frankfurt is now boarding at gate B12. The intercom announced. I stood up, closed my laptop, and slipped it into my leather briefcase. Adjusted my coat, picked up my boarding pass and walked out of the lounge. As I approached the boarding gate, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Pulled it out, intending to turn it off before boarding. It was a text from an unknown number, but the phrasing was instantly recognizable. Alex, please. I made a mistake. Leo left. He said he can't handle the pressure. He said the child support is too high and he can't pay the mortgage on the house. The bank is threatening to foreclose. Kate is crying, she wants her real daddy. She wants you, Alex. I love you, I've always loved you. Please come back. Just come to the hospital. I stared at the screen for a long, quiet second. The image of the woman who had ripped my divorce papers into shreds, the woman who had smiled at another man while carrying his child, the daughter who had told me I was making a big deal out of nothing. They all looked so incredibly small, like figures seen from the wrong end of a telescope. I didn't reply. I took the SIM card out of my phone, walked over to a trash can near the boarding gate, and dropped the small silver piece of plastic into the bin. Then I handed my boarding pass to the flight attendant, smiled politely, and walked down the jet bridge toward the open sky of Europe, leaving the ghosts of Willow Creek behind me forever.